And I think part of the problem is that it's been now characterised as an identity, as a choice. You know, children have been taught in schools that we've all got this innate gender identity within us and you can pick whatever you like, and it can change from even hour to hour or minute to minute. Whereas I'm saying, and actually it is classified as a mental health condition. And we don't treat mental health conditions by affirming the delusion that the person believes in. We engage in exploration and trying to bring a person back to a state of reality, because you can't choose your sex. You know, sex is binary and immutable. That's just the end of it. Some people say, well, it's not very kind to say that, but actually, as a psychotherapist, sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind, and affirming people's delusions is not kind at all.
Good afternoon, James.
Good afternoon.
Good to meet you, man.
See you.
I don't think we've made a show in detail covering the trans topic. We've covered it in various shows. We've talked about it with various people, but never kind of in detail.
That's your lucky day.
Well, I've got loads of questions. Quite an empathetic individual on certain topics, and it's just not something I know enough about. And you know a lot more than me, so I've got a lot of questions. Where are we right now with this topic? Because it feels like nature is healing in certain areas, with what's happened with the International Olympic Committee and certain things. But I suspect this is a topic where there are sinister things that happen in the background that we're not really aware of.
Well, quite right. I mean, people thought that when the Supreme Court, you know, the highest court in the land, ruled that sex means biological sex, that was it, right? That this stuff was going to disappear and society would go back to a state of equilibrium. And we're many months on now from that judgment, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's business as usual as far as the trans agenda is going, right? Children have still been indoctrinated in schools, still receiving dangerous cross-sex hormones, being put on waiting lists for surgical mutilation. Men are still accessing female toilets. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's as bad as it ever was. More people are talking about it now, but the issue still remains the exact same.
More people can openly talk about it now as well.
Yes.
I think at least we've crossed into that area where people can break cover who are public, who are not necessarily going to get cancelled for it now. Not everybody.
Well, you say that, and I have to be careful about revealing confidential material, but I get contacted all the time by people who are still being threatened or actually cancelled from their jobs for speaking out about these things. In fact, I spoke to somebody recently who was fired because she dared to put some stickers on a locker saying what a woman was. So, okay. Yes, it's slightly safer and there's a bit more strength in numbers, but people are still losing their jobs and livelihoods over this stuff, over saying what a woman is. I mean, you know, in 2025.
You have trans patients, you have people you deal with. So as a topic, this isn't going to go away. There are always going to be people of all ages who feel like maybe they're in the wrong body. We had, when I was younger, we had people cross-dressing. That was a thing publicly as well. But it's not going to go away. So how as a society are we meant to understand this topic and deal with it?
Well, mental ill health will never completely disappear, but I do think...
So you consider this a mental condition?
100%.
Okay.
Yes. And I think part of the problem is that it's been now characterised as an identity, as a choice. You know, children have been taught in schools that we've all got this innate gender identity within us and you can pick whatever you like, and it can change from even hour to hour or minute to minute. Whereas I'm saying, and actually it is classified as a mental health condition. And we don't treat mental health conditions by affirming the delusion that the person believes in. We engage in exploration and trying to bring a person back to a state of reality, because you can't choose your sex. You know, sex is binary and immutable. That's just the end of it. And some people say, well, it's not very kind to say that. But actually, as a psychotherapist, sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. And affirming people's delusions is not kind at all. So I think that's only part of it, though, right? Because we've had, as I said, schools indoctrinating children. We've had big corporations pushing this in their advertising. A lot of people profiting off this as well. And so that's why I think you've seen a spike in the numbers of children coming out and saying they're trans. It's not because this was hidden in them all along and now they feel safe enough to come out. It's because now it's seen as a kind of an option. For some, it's actually a bit of a trend and a fad.
Well, I took my daughter to a emo concert. We went to see a band called Pierce the Veil. It's a band we both like. Okay. There were a lot of trans kids there. It's kind of obvious, you can tell. Not in every scenario, maybe I would have picked wrong, but it seemed like there were a lot of trans kids there. And we also went to the Download Festival, and there were a lot of trans kids at the Download Festival. It seems like this is a bit of a safe place within the heavy metal emo world for kids who are identifying as trans. And so what I wanted to ask you really then is, what is your approach when you have a patient? Is probably going to be very different from maybe who Ben Leo interviewed, which we saw on GB News today.
Yes, Dr. Helen Weberly.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that she can even use the title doctor, I think, is an utter disgrace. I mean, she's been poisoning the minds and bodies of children for years.
But is there a central kind of medical thesis for this? And I'm pretty sure if I've got arthritis in my shoulder, there's different ways this can be treated. And I'm pretty sure if I had some form of psychosis, there's certain approved ways to treat it. And heart attack, all different conditions. Is there a centrally agreed from the NHS way of treating this?
Well, unfortunately not. I mean, this is part of the problem. Because under the NHS, and we saw this in the Tavistock Clinic, children were being given puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, then put on waiting lists for surgical interventions. Whereas my view and the view of many of my colleagues, and the view that came from the independently commissioned CAS review that the government put out a couple of years ago, is that explorative therapy and simply the passage of time is how this issue resolves itself. Because in the vast majority of children who have gender dysphoria, if they simply wait a few years, it will pass. Because, I mean, puberty is an uncomfortable time for many. I'm sure we can both think back to that.
Yep.
I think particularly so for young girls, but for young boys as well, right? And I'm sure there were points in our puberty and that of our classmates that if we were told, there's a silver bullet here, don't worry, you don't have to go through that puberty now. Some might have taken it. But you grow through it, you overcome it, as we do with everything in life, and you move on. So this was traditionally called watchful waiting. That's what parents were simply advised to do. Do nothing, and it will, in all likelihood, resolve itself. But now we've got this medicalisation of completely normal and natural feelings. And I say this to my clients who say to me that they hate their bodies, and I'm dealing with teenagers here, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. I say to them, okay, well, you could go down a route of taking hormones for the rest of your life, which could leave you with serious physiological health conditions, and then you could go and get some part of your body surgically amputated. Yeah, that's one option. Or there is another option, which is that you and I work together to explore where these feelings have come from and see if we can get you to a place where you can accept yourself as you are. That's my model. And it's the same model I use for any other form of mental ill health or dissatisfaction in one's life or one's body.
So what is success for you when you are treating somebody?
Well, I view transitioning as a form of self-harm.
Okay. So
I don't view it any differently, actually, to a client who comes to me and says they're cutting their wrists. So do I want my clients going down irreversible medical pathways because they're unhappy in their bodies? No, I don't. But equally, it's not my decision. I'm not there to tell them what to do either. I'm not there to exert pressure on them. I'm simply there to explore, empathize, look at what the options are, try and get to the bottom of what's going on. So for me, if one of these teenagers can finish therapy with me and say, actually, I'm more accepting of myself and my body. I mean, that's all I can really ask for. And it doesn't need to be perfection either. We've all got insecurities. I don't need my clients to be waking up in the morning, looking at themselves in the mirror and thinking, God, I'm beautiful. Do you know, we don't need that. But actually, children have been taught these days that if there's the slightest imperfection, we've got a pill or surgical procedure for that. There's an overlap with the plastic surgery industry. Because I have clients who come and hate their bodies, not because they think they're in the wrong sex, but because they just think they're ugly. Because human beings are insecure by our very nature.
Yeah. Do you lose patients along the way who you cannot convince?
Yeah.
They go to seek treatment elsewhere?
Well, here's the thing, because a lot of my teenage patients are referred to me by their parents because the parents are concerned. They don't know where else to turn to. And some of these teenagers Google me beforehand and form a view that I'm there to try and stop them from being what they want to be. And some of them have, in our first session, accused me, for example, of being a conversion therapist, which I'm not. And I don't work with those clients for obvious reasons. I only work with people who want to work with me.
Yeah. God, what a tricky subject. So, with everything now, let me ask it this differently. Are there any other conditions where the options appear to be almost political?
No, because generally we have a safeguarding first approach in terms of medical interventions, in terms of the legal position. So, for example, there is a mental health condition called body integrity identity disorder, and this is where people have a desire to have one of their limbs or a part of the body removed. People literally say that I feel like my right leg doesn't belong to me. I want it to be amputated. And you know what we don't do in the NHS? We don't go and cut it off. What we do is give those people therapy.
Yeah.
Because they're not well. Similarly, forms of eating disorder. A client might come and say to me, I think I'm really fat, I need to lose weight. The treatment on the NHS is not liposuction. It's therapy again. This is the only mental health condition that we treat through irreversible medicalisation and surgery.
How have we got to this point then?
Because we've normalised it.
Is it cowardice?
That's part of it. There are a lot of cowards out there who don't want to put their head above the parapet. But equally, there's a big profit to be spun on this. I mean, if you look on some of the websites of the private clinics offering these gender affirmation procedures in the UK, I mean, they're charging a hell of a lot of money.
What kind of money are we talking about?
Thousands upon thousands for procedures. The consultations alone run into the many, many hundreds. And because NHS waiting times for gender clinics have been so long, they can capitalise on that anyway. So there's a lot of money to be made. I think there's a lot of evil people out there. We spoke about Helen Webberley.
Yeah. What's this, Connor?
The London Transgender Clinic.
Okay, so
there we go.
Consultation $250, follow up $125.
Yeah, a little cheek enhancement there, just £9,000. Yeah.
Facial feminization. So I mean, I just thought of the other things like the removal of the breasts, the removal of other things.
31 grand for that.
Gender, penile scrotal. What is a penile scrotal flat technique? Is that removal of the penis and the scrotum?
Yes.
31,000 to have that removed. Colovaginoplasty, 34,000. Is that the next thing, or is it an alternative? Is that having a vagina made?
That is making a kind of a
revision
fake
genital
vagina.
surgery varies depending on individual needs. Clitoroplasty, cosmetic. Jesus.
Adds up.
Yeah. So a patient could be worth tens of thousands of pounds.
Oh yeah. And these people are salesmen.
How do you think about this with regards to adults?
I'm against it, which is controversial among some, and I generally believe in freedom of autonomy. But again, I don't want to allow state-sanctioned harm. So actually, I'm working on a paper at the moment, which is going to be proposing criminalisation of all sex reassignment surgery, including for adults.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big step.
It is. But we do that for other things. For example, female genital mutilation. is a criminal offence. Equally, forms of extreme body modification. I don't know if you saw in the news a couple of months ago, but this chap who was cutting off people's ears and things like that.
Yeah.
On their request,
Yeah.
he's been jailed because we don't allow that type of body modification, and yet we currently allow people to have their genitals or breasts amputated. That makes no sense to me. It's not legally coherent.
But you don't see a difference between a child and an adult on this issue at all.
Well, I do see an issue in the sense that children are generally more vulnerable, and the kind of things being offered to children, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones and all the rest of it, means that before they're even at an age in which they can vote in an election, they may already be sterilised. So there is a difference in that respect. But generally speaking, no, because as I said at the beginning, I view this as a mental illness. So it doesn't really matter to me whether you're a child or an adult. People should not have the capacity. People do not have the capacity, and people should not be allowed to consent to having healthy parts of their body amputated.
Well, we try and protect our children in a number of ways. Voting when they're old enough, smoking, vaping, drinking, gambling. We encourage them. I think you have to stay in school till you're 18 now. But on the Ben Leo interview, he asked about the age of puberty blockers. And she said, well, when puberty starts. And he said, what, so 9? And she said, even at 8. So an 8-year-old can be given puberty blockers.
Yeah.
It seems a bit fucking insane. Yeah. I find this whole thing insane.
Oh, it's completely fucking insane. And I'm dealing with this day in, day out, and I still can't believe that we as a society have done this. An 8-year-old can't even open a bank account. They can't even have a Facebook account. And yet they can put themselves on a pathway towards sterilisation. I mean, this, for me, is the most disgraceful thing in the Western world.
Am I right in saying it's only hormone blockers you're allowed below the age of 18? You can't do any of the surgical stuff, right?
Well, you can have puberty blockers, then you can have cross-sex hormones, so that's going to be testosterone or estrogen.
But there's no scalpels coming out until you're of age, right?
Correct, although you can be put on the waiting list.
Okay.
Children can go on the waiting list for that. But we've seen from the research that it tends to be a slippery slope anyway.
You've started the path.
Yes, the vast majority of children that go on puberty blockers go on to take cross-sex hormones. So this bullshit saying, oh, it's not harmful, it just gives that child a time to think. It's very, very rare for a child to go back on that.
Okay, let's work through this. So firstly, puberty blockers. What damage do they do?
Well, there's the physiological element, and then there's the kind of social and cultural element. I mean, in its most obvious form, that child is not going through puberty, right? So while all of its classmates are growing up and going through the changes that puberty brings, vocal changes, height changes, all the rest of that kid is kind of like trapped in a state of limbo almost. And if you progress straight from puberty blockers to cross-sex hormones, then you will be sterilised. Because again, as Weberly pointed out, I mean, you can go on this stuff before you've even hit puberty.
So if you start on the puberty blockers, about what age, say you start on the puberty blockers at, say, 10, what age might you be put on cross-sex hormones?
In your mid-teens, usually. But there's no hard and fast rule with that. And there are private clinics now offering this to young kids. I think generally it's probably around the age of 16, but it can be younger as well. And those essentially cement this in place because you're going to then go through all of the changes, physiologically speaking, that the other sex is meant to go through. But that can bring with it serious health issues. For example, testosterone in large quantities is not very good for people, particularly if their body doesn't naturally produce it. So there's been research to show that girls who are put on testosterone have a much higher rate, for example, of heart problems, heart attacks. And there's issues for men taking estrogen as well. So these things are not without risk. And all the while it's affirming to this person that they are on some journey towards becoming the other sex, which we know is not true because it's not possible to change your sex.
So the journey of affirmation itself is just a very dangerous journey.
Yes.
And if they've started that journey, for them, I guess there's a time in the future they've put a birthday or an 18th birthday where they can consider the surgery. And if you're able to ban the surgeries for adults, then perhaps a large number of these won't start that journey.
Well, I hope so. And I was campaigning for a number of years, along with many others, to try and ban puberty blockers, which the government technically did. But now there's going to be a clinical trial of puberty blockers in which potentially unlimited numbers of children can sign up to this trial.
And be test subjects.
Yeah, guinea pigs, even though the government themselves said, this is an exact quote, that there is an unacceptable safety risk with puberty blockers. I'm ready with the legal team to take a judicial review as soon as this is announced formally and commissioned, because enough children have suffered as is. I mean, the thought that any more children under the guise of a clinical trial will be put on this pathway is sickening to me.
How did you end up here? Because this is not how your career started.
No. I envisage an easy life, to be honest. Well, I was in the civil service, actually, up until a few years ago, working in law and crime and justice. But I started volunteering at Childline, which is the helpline at the NSPCC. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I thought, okay, I'll swap career. And I started to train as a psychotherapist. But during this time, this is now going back 5-6 years ago, I started to see more and more of this trans-related business. I started to have more children come through to me on the Childline phones telling me they were trans. So I started to read up on it. I very quickly became extremely concerned. I found a group of like-minded trainee and qualified therapists who shared my concerns, and we started to try and mount a bit of a pushback from the therapeutic profession, which has kind of allowed much of this to happen. And that led to my own cancellation. I was kicked off my course, my master's degree. I was kind of excommunicated from the therapeutic community. I had to fight litigation for a number of years.
Why? What was their reason to kick you off?
They said that I had brought them into disrepute because I had put out a petition to the government asking them not to go ahead with this ban on conversion therapy, because that would essentially prevent myself and my colleagues from doing anything other than affirming these children into transitioning.
They've brought themselves into disrepute.
Yeah. I didn't even have a hearing. They expelled me over an email, which they only do, I looked in their policies afterwards, they do that if someone's been accused, for example, of sexually assaulting a colleague on campus or defrauding the university. But my petition was deemed serious enough to warrant summary expulsion. So I just received an email one day and that was it. My email address has been blocked and I never had another piece of correspondence with them again.
Was it legal for them to do that?
Well, I took them to the employment tribunal on the grounds of discrimination against my beliefs, and they settled out of court, quite rightly, because I think they would have gotten spanked very badly if we'd gone all the way. So I got a statement out of them apologising and saying it should never have happened and all the rest of it. But I suspect if we'd gone all the way, the ruling would have gone against them. But no, they can't do that. I mean, they literally kicked me out because they didn't like my beliefs.
But that's a large professional cost you've had to pay, and I'm sure financially that became very difficult and a lot of social pressure that's come with that.
Well, I've certainly made a lot of enemies and lost a lot of friends, because we live in this world of kind of hashtag be kind, and some people I used to know and who used to be good friends with don't think I'm a particularly nice person now because I refuse to go along with this nonsense, but I don't. I mean, that's the price I've got to pay ultimately. Cost-wise, I mean, I was very lucky to be able to crowdfund my litigation, just members of the public, thousands of them donating. So that, I'll be forever grateful for that. But no, I couldn't have afforded it by myself. And it's made entering the therapy profession and setting up my own practice far more difficult. And, people can contact me via my website, but I'm forever getting kind of quasi-death threats and abuse and people trying to book, fake sessions and troll me. And so this is the world I'm living in now. And it's a shame. Like, I just wanted to keep my head down ultimately and get the qualification and start practicing. But actually, this issue was far too important to do nothing about.
So going back to the state of where we are at the moment with this, are we kind of in a weird limbo in that it feels like things have shifted back to a bit more of a kind of rational space where, yes, we can discuss this publicly it's a little bit easier. More known, famous people have broken cover and not supported this nonsense. But is the government essentially trying to walk a tightrope with this when really they should be taking a very firm position with this? Are they trying to make a political decision rather than an ethical decision?
Well, up until, I think, only a few months ago, our Prime Minister thought that a woman could have a penis. So that tells you the state of play of British politics at the moment.
Does he still think that? Has he changed his mind?
I mean, he changes his mind like the wind blows, so God knows what he thinks. But I'd say he probably still thinks what he always did, but now he's just trying to play a strategic game. But you see this come out in other members of the cabinet. I mean, I sent someone along to do an undercover recording of Wes Streeting speaking at a kind of health conference, and he was there throwing about all the jargon, trans woman and trans man, and he was saying he's really wanting the puberty blocker trial to move on even quicker. And I don't trust them as far as I could throw them. And so we need a government that is actually going to do something serious about this, like what we saw Donald Trump doing when he came in, and, you know, some of the executive orders that he put out. I mean, that is what we need here in the United Kingdom, but we're a long way off that.
Is there anyone politically that is kind of ringing this bell? I know Liz Truss has.
Some in the Conservative Party have been very good about it, including Kemi Badenoch. Mm-hmm. I collaborated with her a number of years ago on this issue, and she's been consistent throughout in terms of championing, well, women's rights, but also child safeguarding. And a number of others in the Conservative Party have too. Reform, a lot of their figures are also seemingly doing the same.
So it's only going to come from a conservative, right-leaning government?
Yes, because Zach Polanski...
We know what he thinks. He's a lunatic.
He is a lunatic. And I think I sent him a message recently offering him some free therapy, actually, because I'd really like to have him as my patient. But yeah, Polanski, Ed Davey, much the same. He believes that you can change sex and there's no issue with that. So yeah, it's always going to have to come, unfortunately, from the right wing.
I wonder if they really believe these ideas, or they fear not publicly supporting these ideas costs them votes. I suspect it's more the latter.
I mean, there is a lot of social pressure to conform to this stuff, right? Because maybe less so these days, but terms like transphobe,
TERF,
bigot, TERF, these things stick. And nobody wants to be publicly shamed in that way. And a few very high-profile people have been badly burned in the past when they did try and speak out against this. So yeah, I think some of them don't want to be labelled. I mean, it's not dissimilar to the whole piece around being labelled as a racist these days. If you talk about immigration, it's the same thing, and people have taken kind of cowardly decisions off the back of that.
I think it's slightly different, because I'm a conservative and I've been called a racist and a fascist and far right, and I'm like, I would defend it and say why I'm not. If I got called a transphobe, I just almost laugh. Go, what are you on about? What are you talking about?
I hear that, but as I said, I mean, a lot of people have lost a lot for being labelled as a transphobe.
Sure.
So I would try and laugh it off as well and view it as lunacy, but things travel so fast these days, and the way social media is, and that pile-on that someone can experience. And, that's why a lot of people, a lot of kind of big voices still on social media speaking out against gender ideology still do so behind a pseudonym. People are still afraid to speak out on this stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot more difficult if you're in the world of media, music, acting.
Yeah.
There's certain professions. I think it's a lot more difficult to maybe talk about this the way you will, even if you believe it, because it's certainly a left-leaning industry. These tend to be left-leaning industries. But I think there's very little excuse if you're a politician, or if you're especially if you're working in the medical profession, you should understand what it is you're contributing to. I thought your point when you discussed any teachers promoting this should be struck off, and any doctors enabling medical intervention should be jailed. And I guess the question is do we need to go very hard against this as a society, fully reject it, not entertain the debate with any of the activists, and start prosecuting and punishing people in a position of power that have supported this crazy world? And is that even possible?
I think we should. I think we have to, actually. People need to pay for the harm that's been caused to these children. Most people might only read on this issue in the newspaper or whatever, but I'm seeing day in, day out the damage that this does. I hear stories of boys and girls and people in their early 20s who were promised that this was going to be the answer to all their problems. I mean, there's one individual in particular, a detransitioner, who woke up after had his penis removed, and he said instantaneously he felt regret, and he couldn't believe, and he said he couldn't believe what he had done to himself. But actually, in my mind, it's what other people allowed him to do to himself. And I can't even imagine the physical and emotional turmoil that someone like that will have to go through for the rest of their days. Our medical profession exists to do no harm, and they've been actively propagating harm. So on that basis, the individuals who have been engaging with this, performing these surgeries, prescribing these hormones, must be punished.
And then that would mean a lot of people we would lose from the profession, potentially.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care. How can you trust a doctor's ethics if they're willing to go along with this? Same for the teachers. I mean, a teacher's job is to teach impartially, not to indoctrinate their pupils. But again, I get sent things day in, day out of non-binary teachers coming in, male teachers, but who identify as non-binary, coming in wearing dresses, demanding that the class don't call them Mr., but call them MX. This is literally like co-opting children into their fantasy or fetish. And it flies in the face of what education is meant to be. I mean, parents used to be able to trust that their kids could go to school and have a decent education. They don't trust it anymore. More and more parents I speak to are homeschooling their kids because they do not trust that they're not going to be fed ideology every day.
Well, there's indoctrination at all levels in schools now.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw about Orion schools were teaching kids Reform Party of fascists, which is obviously that's not impartial teaching. I don't know, man. When I sent my kids to school, this is a lot older now, but I kind of wanted them to teach them about dinosaurs and weather systems and fractions, not gender ideology. Did they do it at school with you at all, Con?
No,
It didn't cover.
I don't think so. I wasn't paying attention to it.
I know it happened with my daughter because she came home once and said we can only say person with a penis, and they have got a DEI officer, and I was like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, how have we what? Where does it all come from? And so far, like, how's it happened so quick?
Well, that's the thing, and I do have to take my hat off to these organizations and individuals who've been pushing this stuff because they played it very, very well, like Stonewall, for example. I mean, it's incredible. And for me, it's how it's embedded itself into the language. I often say to people, if you go to a bar and the menu has a drinks list and it says a G and blank, you know what that letter is going to be, right? Or if you go to a sandwich shop and it's a BL blank, well, we know what we're getting. Now, if I say LGB blank, there's not a person out there in this country that can't add that letter on, right? This stuff's been burned into our brains. We can't even... to say LGB and then not add the T at the end seems almost bizarre.
You must be a bigot.
Correct. So this is how it's wormed its way into our heads. It's this normalization, as I said. And so when you see magazines listing in the top most 100 influential women, biological men, or when I went to the opera the other week, and they have Emperor Nero. This is meant to be factual. Emperor Nero being played by a non-binary female character. All of this stuff is done with the aim of normalizing these things. And it has become normalized because there were a lot of people watching that opera who didn't seem to bat an eyelid, but I took issue with it. Because I just thought, what are we doing here? And am I supposed to, in order to be a decent person, am I meant to pretend that this female is male because you want me to?
To be fair, though, that's been around for quite a while. Actors, I mean, the start of film, men were playing all sorts of women characters. It's just the case. If she does a good enough job acting it out, You're not thinking that's a non-binary person, are you? They're playing the character.
Well, the name, the pronouns, and the bio on the cast list puts out that they're non-binary.
But that's not who they're playing on stage.
No, but this individual was cast because they present themselves as male. It wasn't a female playing a male role. It was, here's a man because they identify as a man, and so they're suitable to play the role. But yes, of course. I mean, that's a whole nother issue, and whether white people should play black characters and vice versa. And there's a debate to be had on that as well.
Well, it depends. It depends who the character is. I think you could have a black James Bond. It doesn't bother me. If Idris Elba became Bond, I'm not going to be bothered. But if Leonardo DiCaprio plays
Martin
Luther King,
yeah,
or I don't know, Timothy Chalamet plays Gandhi, it's just not going to work. I think there's certain historical figures you kind of need to keep to race and history, but there's certain ones you don't need to. But there was a TV series on Netflix I watched recently. I can't remember its name. You'll probably know what it was. The lead character was a trans character playing a trans character. You'll probably be able to find it on Netflix. It was about a place they would send troubled kids to, Forest Pines. And so it was a lead character who was trans, playing a trans character, not hiding, playing a trans character in a relationship.
Wayward,
yeah, with a woman. And I went with it. I was like, okay, whatever, I'll watch it with my girlfriend. Then they gave us the sex scene. And I was like, so firstly, we had a couple of tops off scenes. It got us used to top surgery. You could see there was top surgery. The nipples looked vastly different. It was a bit weird. But they gave us a sex scene. I was like, all right, hold on a second. You're trying to show us how sex changes in these relations. And I was just like, this is just for the sake of it.
No, it's completely gratuitous. And I've forgotten this man's name. Identifies as a woman now, actress who was there on TV. I think it was Channel 4 playing the keyboard with his penis. I don't know if you remember this. This is from a year or two. You'll definitely be able to find that one if you look it up. If you look up keyboard playing with penis, you'll find that.
I don't know if I want to.
Well,
it's quite impressive, really. I mean, how good are you at playing the...
I could do it.
Can you do chopsticks with your fingers?
I could do it.
What? Because that's one penis against 8 fingers and 2 thumbs.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't look that closely, so I can't...
Did you listen, though?
Yes, as an art form, it's extremely impressive.
Connor, you've got to find it.
Yeah, you will be able to find it pretty easily.
You might need your VPN. Yes, we seem to have gone... Look, in my most generous mind, there are some men who want to dress as women, and there are women who feel like they're boys, and you tomboys you get as well. And who cares? I don't really care. I don't care. If God wants to come to work in a dress and says to me, I don't care. I really don't care about that. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. But what I do care about is it being like, if you get that clip up from that 3 minutes 30 of this Ben Leo interview, this is where I just thought this is just getting a little bit nuts.
If you put your headphones on, guys.
Oh, we need our headphones on.
Okay.
I'll explain it to the listeners in a minute.
Well, I wouldn't have said, Zach, you're a boy and boys can't have babies, because that's absolutely not true. So, I mean, I don't know what your parenting is like.
You don't think think boys can have babies?
You mean males?
Yes.
Yes.
You think males can have babies?
Yes.
Right.
Do you want me to explain?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So transgender males have a womb, a uterus, and ovaries. Okay, so they were born, if you like, female, but they actually identify as males, so we refer to them as males. They have ovaries, a womb, a uterus, a vagina, and that means you can carry a baby.
Transgender males being women.
I think you get the point. So, like, I don't care what you want to wear, but I do care about this idea that is, if we normalise this, what we're going to be saying, how is biology going to change at school? How are we going to change biology lessons? And what age do we start with biology? Is it 7 or 8? It's confusing. It's given options that weren't previously on the table for for kids. And then it's potentially putting them on this path where they want affirmation. They want to go down a road of changing their gender. And I don't know why we're doing this. I don't understand it. I'll probably get cancelled for even saying that on this, but I just don't understand how we've got to this world. It seems insane.
It is. We've completely, as adults in society, completely abdicated our responsibilities towards children.
It's all on us as adults.
Yes. The other issue, of course, is that children who go down this path often end up being the kind of activists of the future, end up co-opting other children into it, you know? And that's the thing as well, because I can have empathy and sympathy for these children and what they've been put through and the way in which they've been indoctrinated. But as soon as they start coming for other kids, as soon as they sign up to work or volunteer for one of these kind of trans activist charities and start pushing this nonsense on children, all of a sudden, they're an enemy as far as I'm concerned, because they are going on and inflicting harm on more children. You know, I'm really terrified, for example, of the kind of leaders of tomorrow, political leaders, right? Because we seem to have rode back and regained some sense in society. But the future politicians and the kids rolling out of Oxbridge now, for example, or finishing up school, they've spent years and years being indoctrinated in this stuff. So they're going to be the ones propagating it in the future. And I'm really quite worried that we're going to start regressing back even further. To your point about what's going on in schools, this stretches also beyond gender identity. It stretches into the realms of sexuality as well, right? Because now there's a whole host of sexualities that you can choose from, including asexual. More and more kids coming out as asexual. And again, once you've told yourself something enough times, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you've got more and more kids now who are saying they don't want sex, they don't want romantic relationships, and they're happy as they are because they identify as asexual. There's asexual activists going around.
Asexual activists?
Yes.
Are these just losers who can't get laid? They want everyone else to have their misery.
Well, actually, there is an activist called Yasmin Benoit, and she is a lingerie model asexual activist, which you might think is somewhat of a misnomer, but it's true. She goes around offering sessions in schools, teaching about how she discovered that she was asexual. So I think that's also really quite worrying. And there's many other sexualities on top of that as well.
Is there any correlation to the growth and access to pornography with this?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Because it does, you know what? I was not a supporter of the online safety bill, but I'm concerned about raising kids on hardcore pornography rather than kids having a curious interest maybe when they were my age where this wasn't available. You know, there was maybe Page 3 of the Sun, they saw some boobs here or there, and they excited and they wanted to finally get with a girl and be with a girl. To kids who, prior to their first experience, real sexual experiences, have seen hardcore pornography. And I'm wondering how that distorts the mind.
Oh, completely, particularly because children have neuroplasticity, that's what it's called. And so your brain can essentially become hardwired into this way of viewing the world, viewing sexual relationships and all the rest of it. And yes, having pornography, any pornography, but particularly kind of hardcore pornography at your fingertips for free at any moment of the day, I mean, that's caused chaos. I mean, that's damaged a hell of a lot of children. You know, even for my generation, for whom, as you say, it was a magazine or whatever, or, you know, you had to pay, 10p to like download a single multimedia message. I don't know if you remember those.
Or the 10-minute free view at midnight.
Yeah. I mean, some of those TV channels.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, which I think, look, teenage boys have always been interested in this stuff for obvious reason in one form or another. But thankfully, it was difficult to get hold of. It wasn't at your fingertips. And it was just a lot more tame and timid anyway.
You didn't get to go to bed with complete access to every single porno film that's ever been made.
No. From
your bedroom late at night when your parents have gone to bed.
Exactly.
Watch whatever you want.
But even then, it's still addictive, right? There are a lot of people my generation of older generations addicted to this stuff. And that was in a very hands-off approach. So now you've got it at your beck and call. And again, I see this as part of my therapeutic practice and my therapy work more broadly. But there's people who are people out there watching hours and hours of pornography every single day. And this is completely hardwiring the brains and actually making it far less likely they're ever going to actually find fulfilling sexual experiences, fulfilling romantic experiences as well. So it's kind of the perfect storm. Social media as well has a part to play in all of this. Because I think young people are becoming more and more self-obsessed and engaging in more and more navel-gazing, and that's part of the problem, right? Because now it's cool and trendy, as I was saying earlier, to have an identity and to have a different sexuality, because who wants to be straight? Who wants to be cisgender? Boring, right? I mean, I'm a straight white man. I'm as boring as they come.
God, you're so boring.
I know, tell me about it. Seriously, there was I've put this out on X before. There was a worksheet in a primary school, and it has a list of all the different gender identities and sexualities.
In primary school?
Primary school. And it's all the multicolored flags. And then there's boxes for cisgender and straight, and it's just white. It's just the white back of the page. I mean, what kid is going to look at that and say, I fancy being that? So... yeah, it's trendy, and kids are. I mean, human beings are self-obsessed by our nature, unfortunately. But I think we're developing a lot of narcissists as well, right? If you have a conversation out with a young person, often they will actually introduce themselves with this whole list of different identifiers. I'm a non-binary, pansexual with ADHD. And
I've seen this where you will see left-wing protests and someone will turn up with a camera and ask them questions. Yeah, how do you identify? And it's this strange list of options sometimes I've not heard of.
Yeah. And then you'll have your pronoun circles and everyone goes around and shares their pronouns and all the rest of it. But, going back to what you were saying earlier about taking your kids to like an emo concert, whatever, like, there's always fads and trends, right? Mm-hmm. And teenagers like to do things that are seen as rebellious as well, particularly if it gives them one up over the adults. I mean, gender ideology is kind of perfect in this sense because you can, as a child, say to your parents, I know you thought I was your son, actually I'm your daughter, and by the way, the name you gave to me, that's my dead name, right? That doesn't apply to me anymore, and you must use the pronouns that I say you have to use, otherwise you're a transphobe. I mean, these are children wielding power over their parents.
Fucking hell. I think we're going to look back at this period of history and go, what? Like the multiple experiments we've ran on our children, from technology to education to medical procedures. I mean, the education piece, we didn't have sex ed when I was at school. It wasn't even a subject. There was no sex ed. We covered part of it in biology. We had the book, we had the different parts of the body, and we all had a giggle and a laugh, and we learnt about the different parts of the body and reproduction. That was it. It was a very small part. You had sex ed, didn't you? Or was it called PSA?
Yeah, some form of basically use protection.
Yeah, use a condom. Yeah. It seems like it's something they've grown more and more in schools. But I've always thought, hold on. This is something that your parents can teach. Your parents can, like, we can teach this at home. Like, I can tell Connor, like, if you ever choose to have sex, Connor, you should use condom. I can teach that to my kids, right? I don't need some faceless person, I don't know who they are, what their identity and pronouns are, teaching my children about sex education.
A lot of parents would agree with you. I think some parents are actually, unfortunately, still too afraid to have those kind of conversations. I think some of them view it as easier for the schools to do it, which is surprising given we're living in an age of sex positivity and all that. But I think, but you're right, this is something that should be a conversation between a parent and a child.
By the way, my parents didn't teach me anything. I never spoke about sex with my parents, ever. You still figured it out.
Yeah, I think, but we've this touches on another point, which is the kind of coddling that we're engaging in, right? Infantilizing children, creation of safe spaces, etc. rooms that children go to in school if they become overwhelmed, not because they've got some sort of kind of neurological issue, but because if they're just a bit stressed, they need to go to like your kind of equivalent of like a padded cell in a prison or something. So children these days, and they've got all the jargon, all the buzzwords, you know, feeling depressed, feeling anxious, often engaging in a lot of hyperbole. That's not to say the kids aren't struggling. It's tough being a kid. It's tough being a teenager. I work with a lot of them. But we coddle it too much, and then we don't develop resilience. And that then stays with a person into adulthood. But even in universities now, you have to have safe spaces. You have to make sure that people are given proper allowances if they suffer from exam stress or whatever. There was a person on my psychotherapy course who was an adult who said that they were too afraid to speak in front of groups, so they were given an exemption from doing some of the course requirements.
But I think I'm a bit older than you, but I'm pretty sure when we were younger, we were told to face this. You got to face these challenges. You got to face your fear. You got to get up there and talk in front of somebody.
That is literally the antidote for anxiety. I do this as part of my practice. It's called exposure therapy. If someone is avoiding something, that's a good sign that what they need to do is actually find a way to expose themselves to it gradually, and perhaps with the support of somebody else. You know, someone who's got a fear of flying, if they don't go on an aeroplane for 20 years and then step foot on a Ryanair plane, they're going to be bloody terrified, and not just because it's Ryanair, but because they've not been on one in so long. But it's the same thing with any of these other anxieties or avoidant strategies that are developing. But we live in this age now in which we pander to people too much. And that's where the pronouns and all that stuff comes into it, right? Because words are violence. Yeah. And people can say they don't feel safe, not because they actually think you're going to physically hurt them, but because your words have hurt them or offended them. And I think we've done children a great disservice by coddling them rather than trying to instill a sense of resilience in them. And I work with all of my teenage clients in this way, and some of them don't want to hear it, right? Some of them want me to spend all my time telling them that they're a victim and how tough life is. And I certainly do empathize with my clients when they've been through something difficult, because life can be tough. But like I said earlier, you have to be cruel to be kind sometimes, and human beings thrive when they can be resilient, because life is going to throw shit in your direction. That's one of the only certainties in life, right? So coddling people and trying to wrap them up in cotton wool will never end well.
Is it Jonathan Haidt who wrote The Coddling of the American Mind?
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah.
I mean, worrying, but a great book.
But that's exactly what we're talking about here, is this wrapping kids up in cotton wool and keeping them safe from every potential danger, not learning any resilience. But ultimately, this can lead to more mental health issues, right?
A lot of children just don't know how to actually be in the world. They don't even know how to look after themselves. I'm not saying that, you know, parents should be leaving their 8-year-old at home alone while they go off to the movies or whatever. But, you know, there comes a point at which you have to allow your children to grow up. And it will be a bit scary for parents as well, right, to actually give them that responsibility. But they have to. You know, you have to take a few risks in life with this stuff. But kids these days don't know how to look after themselves. And it's not setting them up very well for future life. And, you know, I've seen, for example, that parents these days are less and less likely to let their kids even go out and play in the street, for example, like with the local neighborhood kids. And that's not because in reality we're living in more dangerous times than we were before. I mean, there are certain dangers now that maybe weren't as prevalent in the past, but actually it's more just people have this fear and this feeling of unsafety. But that sets a tone for the rest of that child's life. You know,
Well, it's weird because there's all this fear of kind of physical danger, but a complete acceptance of emotional danger or you know, great. Okay, so we won't let kids out. You can't go out late at night, or you can't go out on your own. And you know, I understand where it comes from, but at the same time, it's like, here's a supercomputer that has access to any kind of violence, sexual information that you want. And I'm going to send you to school where, as a child, you're going to be talking about kinks. So we're sexually liberating these children in every possible way. We're completely liberating them in terms of their gender and their pronouns, but but we're worried about them running around the neighborhood. It's like it's kind of weird, isn't it?
It is weird. And again, that's because the people pushing this stuff don't see these things as dangers. They see these as welcome things, right? Because this is all part of identity. It's why you've got drag queens reading to kindergarten children.
Well, I even find the whole Pride events a bit fucking odd in that, you know, when I was a kid, if you wanted to get a porno mag, it was like up there at the top shelf. It was difficult to get to. Like, pornography was difficult to get access to. And, you know, what you did in your bedroom was kept into your house. And then you see a Pride event where kids are there and there's like guys with pig masks on being walked with a lead on all fours. We're exposing people's sexual kinks in a very public way and celebrating it in front of families. It's a bit weird.
It is, yeah.
And oh, by the way, and I'm the weirdo for saying it's weird.
I call it perversion, which is a strong word, but I think that's exactly what it is. And it all falls under this LGBTQ plus umbrella. That plus at the end is the most dangerous bit of it all because it encompasses
Anything you can make up.
Yes, and that includes, and I've seen people argue for this, that includes bestiality, right?
I thought that was illegal.
Well, it is illegal, but there's still... I've seen therapist groups trying to say that we should normalize this and we shouldn't shame people who...
What?
Yeah.
We shouldn't shame people.
Have you not heard this term, don't yuck someone's yum? That's the newest jargon.
Look. People have their different things they like, right? I like pasty English women. That's my thing. I do. I don't know what... Connor, you like... you're Latino women, don't you? You're like... And some people like brunettes and blondes, and some like skinny, some like get all that. And, you know, and maybe some guys like... I don't know, guy I went to school with loved Asian girls. That's cool. Like, you have your thing, but I think we can have red lines and go, yeah, like, wanting to fuck a dog or watch someone fuck a dog. We can have a red line there, surely. Surely in society we can say shagging your pets is a bit much.
Well, you would have thought so, wouldn't you?
That to me is that's. Is this the same world of people who referred to paedophiles as minor attracted people?
Correct.
Yeah, complete fucking nonsense, right?
Of course. Again, it's also normalized forms of depravity.
Con, you sound like you're about to challenge us on this subject.
Are we seeing more men transitioning than females?
There's been an inversion, actually. It used to be a lot more men. Now it's a lot more girls, and girls of younger ages as well.
And are you seeing a typical symptom of it in terms of like early childhood trauma? What's gotten to that point?
Well, for those for whom they're more kind of persistent, often autism. In fact, I think all of my teenage clients at the moment who say they're trans are on the spectrum. So autism is one of the kind of one of the core comorbidities that exists alongside this, because people with autism often engage in things like kind of black or white thinking, take things very, very literally. So if they're told, well, this is how boys are and this is how girls are, and they don't ascribe to that, they can convince themselves they were actually born in the wrong body. But yes, you can get historic trauma, sexual abuse, internalized homophobia. A lot of these kids are actually just gay, but they grow up with a mindset that it's better for me to be trans and straight rather than be gay. And if they were left alone, they'd actually just grow up to be gay adults. So there's a whole host of comorbidities that are present alongside this.
I did note down one of your tweets, which I did want to ask you about. I work with children who identify as trans. Mm-hmm. The girls hate being female because they think the society views them as weak or vulnerable. The boys hate being male because they feel pressure to be strong and tough. Children being irreversibly harmed because of stereotypes. I found that last... Oh, you got it. I thought that last line was quite interesting.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you is, are you saying that the stereotypes we have for male and female are dangerous?
Yes.
But
That's quite progressive of you.
That's yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, after I posted this, I had a load of people saying that I was pushing the trans agenda, and it was bizarre. I said to those people, you need to go back and look at my timeline.
This is the one that didn't make sense to me. When I saw it, I was like, hold on, I'm confused here.
Yeah. There are fundamental differences between men and women.
Yeah.
But if you grow up in a society in which there is still this expectation that men always need to be tough or strong and not show vulnerability or emotion, that is going to have a detrimental impact on kids. You know, I speak to teenage boys who are identifying as girls, and they tell me that the thing they like most about the thought of being a girl is that there's less pressure on them and less expectation for them to succeed, to be strong. Some of these boys are more slight, let's say, than some of their peers.
Yeah.
Not as tall, not as broad. They're having a tough time of it because they're getting bullied. They're being told, yeah, you're not man enough. So that type of thing is destructive. And then it's no wonder that a young boy is liking the idea of being a young girl, because it means that it's not his fault. And it just means that there was this explanation all along, and actually maybe he was secretly a girl all along. And same for girls. I mean, there's a lot of shit that young girls and women have to go through as well in society. And still a lot of it is based around stereotypes. That women are kind of inherently weaker and vulnerable. And yes, there are physiological differences between men and women, but I think that some of these narratives are what is getting into these young people's heads. Again, I mean, this isn't just something I've made up. This is based on conversations I've had with my clients.
Oh no, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that in the slightest. But it did confuse me because it's like, okay, so what do we do with that? If that is true, what do we do with that? Because are we meant to teach young boys to be strong and resilient, but accept maybe not all of them are, and allow them also to be vulnerable? Because there are also other people who think that we've essentially feminized men too much. We've kind of beat out of boys that they can be tough and strong, and they have to be like. There's a real split in society on this.
I want to do away with this narrative that men or women have to be a certain thing. I want to stop vilifying forms of femininity or masculinity, you know?
Do you think we... I'm not sure we do. I think we have moved on from that, because I'm sure, Connor, you were at school, you probably had lads who weren't the big strong lads, right? Mm-hmm. But like, you just kind of accept it, don't you?
As you get older, younger is much harder. I'd say they've had a much difficult time
at school.
At 8 years old when they weren't in the first team rugby, and then sixth form when everyone's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're kind of screwed both ways here, right?
Yeah.
Because if the other end of the scale is that you're engaging in toxic masculinity, right? But the point is that femininity and masculinity has been looked through this microscope and been analysed by all of society. And so for a young person growing up now, I'm not surprised there's young girls who don't want to be girls and young boys who don't want to be boys, right? Because it's not a good place to be. You're being judged and criticised and analysed no matter what you kind of do there in that space. So I think, now I don't think stereotyping is the sole cause, because stereotypes have always existed. And some stereotypes are actually based in reality as well. But it's the overarching narrative that we're giving to these kids. And a combination of stereotypes plus now the ability to go on medication and then have surgery, I think that's a toxic combination ultimately.
But aren't some of these stereotypes inherent to our gender?
Yes. Some. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I just don't understand what you're meant to do with that.
Just treat scientific facts as facts. It seems to me as though you're very accepting and caring for whatever you want to do. Just don't change science.
Pretty much. I mean, you know, let's say I've got a teenage boy come to me and says he wants to be a girl. I'll ask him, okay, what are the things you don't like about yourself? What is it about being a girl that appeals to you? And he'll say to me, well, girls, I don't like body hair. and I don't like wearing a suit and tie into school every day, and I like to hang out with girls more often, and I like to do ballet, just examples, right? I will turn around and say, well, you should be able to do all of those things as a male. You don't need to change your sex to do those things. Okay, you don't like your body hair. I mean, we do have answers for that don't require you going under the surgeon's knife. Yeah? So I just think we need to stop putting so much pressure around the way that men and women are expected to be in society, because this stuff still exists. But I also, that doesn't mean shaming people for being masculine or feminine. I mean, basically, I think we should recognize the differences between men and women that exist on a biological, physiological level, even a psychological level. But we also need to acknowledge that people won't always want to fit into that bucket, so to speak, but that doesn't need to be changing your sex and trying to transition out of who you are and having surgery or taking in hormones, right? People should generally be able to live and let live without going through that process. And I think if a lot of these younger people were taught that message, then, okay, they might have some quirks and some idiosyncrasies, but they're going to be safe and they're not going to be at risk of irreversible harm. So that's the position that I take on it, ultimately. So I don't know if that clears it up for you. I can see why people were confused by that, particularly because it's not the narrative I'm usually putting out.
Well, I think it was the term. The stereotypes are. Here we go. Children being irreversibly harmed because of stereotypes. And I was just like, because we're talking about this. It's the opposite side of the harm here. There's the harm of, we're talking about the physical harm of transitioning, but we're also talking about, I guess, the mental anguish of stereotypes. And both are a form of harm we're talking about.
Correct. Because every single one of my teenage clients who thinks they're trans are fully bought into stereotypes. And in fact, that's the justification in their head for why they want to transition and why they were born in the wrong body. If they were able to let go of those stereotypes or say to themselves, actually, rather than go along with these stereotypes, I'm going to challenge them and I'm going to live my life how I want to live anyway, they wouldn't even be speaking to me.
But isn't that so? Because stereotypes exist for a reason, right? Like, there's stereotypical jobs that a man will do and there's stereotypical jobs that a woman will do, but you will get exceptions to the rule. Is it less about the stereotypes themselves existing and more about teaching that you don't have to conform to the stereotype?
Yes, I think that's, and perhaps that would have been a slightly better way of putting it. But yes, it's this notion that there are exceptions to the rule. Yeah. But these things are still very deeply ingrained, right? Like, I mean, the example I gave, let's say, of like a boy wanting to hang out with the girls and do ballet. Like, you might think, oh, well, we had Billy Elliot, and so that's just normalized all of this. But it hasn't happened, right? I don't know, but I'd still say that a young boy in school who's doing ballet and hanging out with the girls is probably going to get a bit of bullying.
And I think that's probably more pressure from the other boys than the parents.
Yeah.
Like, I know, look, I love my son. If he'd have come to me and said, Dad, I want to do ballet, I would 100% supported him. There's no world where I don't support him do whatever he wants to do. But in school, that's where the real pressure exists. I worry about schools a lot. Yeah, if I could go back, I would seriously consider homeschooling my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've had an interesting week or so with the BBC, whereby they obviously did something stupid with Panorama. I still don't understand how they thought they would get away with it. And have had to apologise and rightly been questioned. And we found out off the back of that there are activist groups within the BBC. And we've seen a large number of people come out and defend the BBC. And there's definitely a political split on that. Not entirely, not like most subjects. There have been conservatives coming out and defending the BBC. But there's a lot of people from the left who've been defending the BBC as well. But I thought it was very interesting. I don't think someone on the BBC does the interview Ben Leo just did for GB News. I don't think there's any world where that happens. And therefore, for you, have the mainstream media perpetuated this situation? I mean, I think the answer is yes. So how bad have the media been with this?
completely complicit, actually have ensured that this stuff spreads across society, like we were talking about earlier, and kind of a form of like contagion across society. The fact that the BBC for so many years using female pronouns to refer to male rapists is shocking. I mean, that flies in the face of journalistic integrity as far as I'm concerned. And we saw recently, I don't know if you saw that Martine Croxall, you know, the BBC presenter who's
Yes.
been...
Have you seen this, Con? Where she refused to read...
There was
She corrected the teleprompter.
Yes, the teleprompter was quoting someone else as having saying pregnant people, and she then paused for a split second and then said women.
Yes.
With a kind of...
Wry smile.
Wry smile. There was a certain look, and then moved on. Anyway, there were loads of complaints into the BBC, and they've kind of... Well, they seem to have found against her and said that it was inappropriate what she did.
There were complaints against her.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of support for her as well.
There was a hell of a lot of support for her, and the vast majority of the country would be behind her. But again, you've got a few loud voices there. And the BBC ultimately said that what she did fell kind of below the standards that are expected of their presenters, where what she was doing was actually just stating a matter of fact. You know, so, and then this is the same outfit, as I said, that uses female pronouns to describe rapists, and go on to CBeebies. Right, some of the stuff they're putting out there to kids, again, on sexuality and gender identity is utterly shocking. I put out a clip of this the other day from a BBC documentary about Bill Cosby, and they interview a non-binary sex
God,
therapist.
I saw this.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What is this? Where is this? Create a sex-positive world where someone is able to pay a conscious woman to come and be drugged for a fetish for having sex with unconscious people. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
This is nuts. Did you see this, Connor? This is This was on the BBC.
Yeah, in a documentary about an abuser, Cosby.
It's just being an apologist.
Yeah. Well, it's not even an apologist. She wants to... She likes the idea. She thinks it's healthy for a society to be able to have women who can be paid to be essentially raped.
You got it? You found it? Which one is it? Let me just remind myself. Yeah. It's not a good advert for health.
If we actually grappled with the fact that sex negativity is what causes this type of behavior, then we could create a world where in a idyllically sex-positive world, someone is able to pay conscious women to come and be drugged so that I can get my kink out, my fetish on having sex with unconscious people. There's a consensual way to do that. If we act...
I'm pretty sure you could go to a prostitute and say, pretend to be unconscious for me. I don't think we need a society that says we need to be sex positive and accept every single kink and find a scenario for somebody to act out every single kink, because I think there are dangerous kinks, personally.
But isn't that just the most bizarre thing, that we're talking about a sexual abuser and this person's response is we need more sex positivity? That's what we're lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so utterly backwards. But she is non-binary and obese, and
she looked exactly how I expected her to look. If you'd have told me about this before seeing it, she looked exactly how I expected her to look.
And that clip, you know, that documentary was put out a few years ago. When I first posted the clip, it went viral. There were various papers reporting on it. BBC defended it, actually, and that clip is still up. And crucially, it went unchallenged, right? If they had then someone come on next and maybe challenge that. But no, this was just put in there as if this is the way that society should go. So that's the type of thing that the BBC have been complicit in. So that's why I think it's rotten to the core, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God. Okay, can we talk about the detransitioner wave?
Yeah.
Because I find this fascinating as a subject. How big a wave is this? How big a movement is this?
Well, the truth is we don't know.
Okay.
Because, I mean, think about it, right? For most people, if they have taken any step to transition, whether socially or medically, and then they regress it, they're going to have been pretty badly burnt by that. They're already going to be a bit messed up. And so it's quite unlikely they're going to want to kind of stick their head above the parapet again and say, oh, by the way, guys, I got it wrong.
But some have.
Some have. And there's some very brave individuals who've been willing to come out and share their story on it. But generally, most people who detransition will just do so without telling many people without shouting it to the world.
When you detransition,
Yeah.
my expectation is you can change your certain amount of your physical appearance back. The things you can choose with your hair, and maybe if you've grown a beard and you can no longer have the beard, and the clothes you wear, you can choose to represent yourself as the gender you were born with, right? But my assumption is some things can't. I mean, you can't detransition if you've had your breast. Well, maybe you can. I mean, you could have breast augmentation, I guess. I think it's going to be a lot harder for a man to return after maybe he's removed his penis and genitals, right? Like, what are the things that you can't detransition?
Well, I mean, what you just said there about breasts, I've actually seen that argument put forward by various trans activists who say, well, it's not actually that high risk procedure because if they regret it, they can always just have plastic surgery.
But they will look mutilated.
Also, the silicone.
Yeah.
They will cease to have any actual function.
Yes, they won't be able to produce milk if they had children. Can they still have? Can you detransition to still have children, or can you become infertile from the process?
Yes, that depends. But many will be infertile,
Okay.
and so there's no coming back from that.
But the fertile ones won't be able to produce breast milk for the child.
It depends on the journey, so to speak, that individual has gone on. But yes, some of the effects of these cross-sex hormones are permanent. And so you will never be able to go back to the baseline that you were at before. And yes, with surgery, obviously, if you've had parts of your body removed, you're not getting them back. And so detransitioning is a bit of a misnomer in that sense, right? Because the only person I would say who can ever truly detransition is someone who's only socially transitioned, i.e. changed the name and what their clothes are, as you said.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a misnomer, but there's more and more people doing it, unsurprisingly, because this isn't the proper treatment for a mental health condition. So it's unsurprising that a lot of people are regretting it. But again, part of the problem we have with the Tavistock and other clinics around the world is not been decent enough follow-ups. They perform the surgery and then they say good luck to you, essentially. So we don't really know how many of these patients are actually doing years down the line.
Is Tavistock still operational?
No, the Tavistock was closed down.
Okay.
That was one of the recommendations from Dr. Hilary Cass, who did that
Cass report.
review. But we're now setting up various gender clinics around the country, which are still under development. And I saw before that some of the individuals who worked in the Tavistock have been involved in terms of setting up these new gender clinics, which is obviously extremely worrying. I mean, I don't think we should be having any gender clinics at all. We need to stop singling this out as if this is some sort of different presentation to anything else. It's a mental health condition. It should be treated as any other mental health condition is. You don't need a specified gender clinic to deal with it. So that's not good.
What do we learn? What have we learned from those who have attempted, let's call it attempted detransition, because you can't fully detransition? What have we learned from them?
We've learned just how easy it was for them to go down that path in the first place. Very little safeguards. And they say to me, they wish that the therapist had actually said to them, are you sure you want to do this? Because most of the therapists were fully on board and affirming the new identity and encouraging them and saying, this will be life-changing for you. So very, very little roadblocks to actually getting what they wanted. And that's the thing, right? Because kids and teenagers, when they want something, they feel something, they really want it. And they will say whatever they can to persuade you that they want it. And we know, like, teenagers, hormone-fueled and all the rest of it, can become convinced of things that they later in adulthood regret. I'm sure that's the same for all of us to some extent.
If it was down to you, would you classify it as its own mental health condition, or would you just say it's body dysmorphia?
Yeah, I'd probably just group it in with the, yes, just an
is by classifying it as its own mental health condition kind of giving it validation?
To some extent, yes, and that is kind of the problem, because it kind of got pathologized to the point that you get the diagnosis, then you get the treatment and the surgery for it. So yes, I do agree with you on that. But I would rather it be pathologized and seen as an identity. But the term gender dysphoria, I mean, even that term actually as a psychiatric diagnosis has been watered down by the various psychiatric bodies. And there's some leading figures in the psychiatric world who actually want to do away with it altogether. Not because they don't, because they see it as someone's innate identity. They don't see it as them being mentally ill. But yes, I would probably want it under a general umbrella of just dysphoria, right? Because people hate all sorts of things about themselves, personality and body. So yes, I don't think we should keep singling this out. This is the problem. We put so much focus on it now. That word trans and this notion of coming out is so much. I mean, this is all part of the drama of it
celebration.
All. Yeah, the joy, the trans joy, and the pride. Again, what kid isn't going to want to be celebrated and be told you should be proud of yourself? Some of these kids probably never been told by a parent or a teacher before that they had anything to be proud of. But now you can just come out, say you've changed your pronouns, and all of a sudden people have to celebrate you. I mean, that's quite enticing, isn't it?
Do you think there's a deeper cultural problem here? Is this reflective of a deeper cultural problem in society?
Yes. And I'm working on a book proposal at the moment called The Victim Virus, which is me. I mean, I may not be particularly popular as and when it comes out, because I'm essentially diagnosing swathes of British society with this new condition that I've developed. But essentially, I think we are indulging victimhood, and we are enabling and facilitating what is called in the business cognitive distortions, right? Projection, splitting, catastrophizing, perversion, regression, all of these things. Far from saying actually these are things that need to be looked at and treated, we're actually actively enabling them now. So whether it's climate catastrophizing, and activists lying down in front of ambulances and being cheered on for it, or whether it's people prejudicing white students in this country because they're white and giving a leg up to people who aren't white, and they do so under the umbrella of being anti-racist, even though what they're doing is actually racist in and of itself.
Yeah.
We're facilitating all of this. So yes, I think there is a greater problem in society, and I think it's mostly surrounded about this notion of victimhood.
Because rather than building kids up, we're now giving them reasons to not be built up.
Because it's much easier to be a victim and to blame everyone else for your problems, right? And that you can carry that through with you all your life. And that really does keep people stuck. I've spoken to some black people, for example, who were told by other black people that whether or not they think of themselves as victims, they are, by virtue of the fact that they are black. I mean, how regressive is that? So victimhood is currency that is traded these days. And the mental health professions have a hell of a lot to do with that, right? I mean, I used to think that everyone could do with having a therapist. I genuinely believe that, because I thought, well, who couldn't benefit from having a conversation about life's problems? But now I think therapists have done a huge amount of damage, actually. And I've changed my view overall on therapy. I think, of course, it still can be beneficial, but there's a lot of dangerous therapists out there. There's a lot of over-labeling, over-diagnosing, and playing to this kind of victim status. And I think we need to start building up resilience, particularly in our children, and not allowing themselves to be viewed as a diagnosis of one form or another.
It feels like we have experts in everything who have to find a problem in everything and then a cure. It reminds me of when I go to the US and you see the TV ads, because we don't have ads here for medicines and pills and and you go in the US and there seems to be every kind of conditions I've never even heard of, and they're advertising cures. There's money to be made in this, and it feels, I don't know, I just don't know how we've got here.
And parents don't know what to do because
the kids have too much power, lack of a parental authority.
Partly. Also, they'll have other people in their ear, I'm sure, if they've got a hyperactive young son saying, oh, have you had him tested for ADHD? I mean, the diagnoses of things like ADHD have shot up, right? And that isn't because it doesn't exist, or there aren't some kids out there who do need medication, let's say, to actually help them function and cope in the world. But a lot of the time we're pathologizing completely normal behavior. I mean, it's quite well known that young boys can be a little bit boisterous. Right.
I definitely would have been diagnosed ADHD as a kid. My parents would have told you that. If it existed, it wasn't a thing. I was just hyperactive.
This is the thing. And I hear this on the trans stuff. A lot of people I speak to now, let's say gay adults, say, if I was a teenager these days, I would have been transitioned. So by the medical profession offering these silver bullets to people who are just going through life and, you know, with its ups and downs, and being told, here's the answer for that, and you've got a condition and here's the treatment for it, that's wreaked havoc on people. So there's far too much pathologizing generally. And as we said earlier, there's far too much kind of pandering as well. I mean, life is tough. I think some of my clients may find it frustrating, but I spend a lot of my time with my clients talking about acceptance, because I think they come to me and expect me to be able to wave a magic wand and make everything all good for them. But actually, life can be pretty shit. I mean, we know that, right? And people can suffer from the worst of fortune and luck, even if they've been the most decent of people. That is life, and sometimes you actually have to accept what you've been given and be grateful in the small ways that you can be.
And learning to bounce back from adversity creates a more resilient, or can create a more resilient person.
I mean, the most successful people out there will tell you that they only succeeded after multiple failures. So
well, if you go and raise money from a Silicon Valley VC, they want to know about your failures, not your successes. I mean, they want to know both, but they will ask you, where have you failed and what did you learn?
Exactly. How dull would life be if there was no such thing as failure, if there was no such thing as even negative emotions? I mean, some of my clients say to me they'd love to just feel happy all the time. I mean, I think how dreadful. Honestly, there is something powerful and human about negative emotions and negative experiences. It is part of life. And if you don't experience some of them on your journey, then I don't think you've lived life properly.
No. So what's the end game here, James? What would you see? What would success be for you?
Well, the trans stuff is just one issue out of many, but as an ideology, it needs to be eradicated. It needs to be eradicated from our schools, from our medical profession. And I do not want any route for children or adults to be able to mutilate their bodies. And I don't know how we're going to get there. Because as I said, if the Supreme Court judgment doesn't make a damn bit of difference, then what can you do ultimately? That's again partly why I think heads need to roll and people need to be punished, right? We need to start holding people accountable for what's happened. That's why I want to see criminalization of some of these things. I mean, we need to have new legislation in this country. You know, we've still got the Gender Recognition Act, which puts forward this notion that you can change your gender legally in some way. I mean, we need to get rid of that as well. We need to get rid of this entire notion of gender identity because it's actively harming children. But I don't know.
And like, how big a mountain is this to climb? Like, what are you up against?
It honestly, it may be insurmountable. I mean, I'm not going to stop, and I know many others won't too, but it may be insurmountable because it's just been too normalized, and it's not localized either. This is across the Western world. Even Trump, with his executive orders, has been hamstrung in many ways in trying to push forward some of these. And Weberly, who we showed up earlier, is over now setting up her clinic in US states through various loopholes. So if Trump can't stop it, you know, who can? So it's going to take a kind of societal-wide effort, ultimately.
But if you do, there are going to be people against you, pushing hard against you to do this. There seems like a rather aggressive activist community for this particular subject. They feel very aggressive.
Oh, I'm getting death threats, death wishes all the time. It's part of the reason I currently only see clients online, actually. I think it'll be too risky, genuinely. I'm, you know, some of my family members are scared if I go and speak at conferences or things. So there is a lot of anger from the other side, and they're certainly willing to weaponize violence. The government at the moment is still wanting to push forward with this ban on conversion therapy. They've promised this. And if they do that, there is a chance that myself and other therapists who don't automatically affirm a client in their chosen gender identity could actually be prosecuted. So I don't know what the next few years looks like.
What are the shoots of hope you see then?
Transparency, right? The fact, as you said earlier, we're having the conversations. It's out there. People are becoming braver. We have seen small wins, right? Well, actually, it's not fair for me to say small wins. We've had some big wins, right? Like we've seen with the Olympics and in sports, like we've seen with the Supreme Court judgment, which is still a stellar judgment at the end of the day. Like with, at least for now, the ban on puberty blockers. So we've had many wins, but I don't want to negate that, but I just think we've got a bumpy road ahead, really. And I'd like to be able to turn my attention to some of the other issues that are going on in the society from a psychological perspective, because there's a hell of a lot of them. But for me, this just stands out head and shoulders above all the other issues going on, because I cannot think of anything else in which our leaders and our professionals have been so complicit in harming so many vulnerable children.
And numbers-wise, how many children are we talking about here? I know one is too many, but
who knows? There are the children who aren't able to get puberty blockers and hormones legally. There are various black market routes to getting this stuff as well.
That must be frightening you, because that must be considerably more dangerous.
Of course, and many parents have only found out actually because they've discovered that their child's been purchasing things online or whatever. But again, you don't even know who they can turn to. I also got excommunicated from Childline, where I said I was volunteering as a counsellor because they didn't like my advocacy either. And I've become very concerned about Childline, which is meant to be there to safeguard children. I mean, it's called the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. I now call it the National Society for the Promotion of Cruelty to Children, because children go on and speak to a counsellor there or write in the message boards. And I've seen conversations in which they've been actively encouraging or advising children on young girls how to bind their breasts, for example. So parents don't know where to turn. There's danger for kids really everywhere, and particularly in the online space. I know this is all very depressing. I wish I had a more hopeful message. I do believe ultimately that common sense will win out, and because I think there's a majority that are aligned with our way of thinking. And it's
I agree. I think there is. I just think it's been hard to talk about it. I mean, even doing this, we know what's going to happen when we put this out. We know what's going to happen in the comments. I know there's going to be certain people, because I share every episode, say, on Facebook. There's certain people who are immediately going to hate it. They're immediately going to criticize me for doing it. They're going to criticize me for talking to you. They're going to criticize you. I know that, but you can have this conversation in public. It's a lot easier to do that now than it was, say, a year, 2 years ago. I mean, we had it with we own a football team, and we have a women's side. There was a period in time where if you were a trans woman, you could play for a women's side. And the conditions from the FA were that you must have done one hormone test in the last year and be below a certain, you'll know probably better than me, a certain marker. And we had a game that was coming up where a 6'4" goalkeeper was meant to be playing against us. If I've got that slightly incorrect, I apologise. But we know it was coming. And we know the risks and the dangers, and also that it was unfair. Look, it didn't make any sense. You aren't going to get any girls playing women's football who are going to speak up against this, because there is a social pressure to support this. This was cowardice from the Football Association. Complete and utter cowardice. I tried to talk to people about it. I wanted to, you kind of remember, I wanted us to come out as a team and say, we're going to ban trans women from our side and we'll refuse to play against any team that has one. Going around and surveying and trying to talk to people about it. Quietly, people agreed with me, but they weren't willing to publicly support it. There was a fear, this climate of fear everywhere, that if you spoke against this, you were a bigot. You weren't caring. You weren't a nice person. But we can have that conversation now. But for a couple of reasons. People like yourself, I think people like J.K. Rowling have been very helpful. I think judgments that have come in, the Supreme Court helps. I think ultimately we need the politicians to be the ones to create the correct boundaries So it makes it a conversation that's easier to have, personally. And not just those, the kind of sporting authorities as well.
Look, I agree. The fact we're even here having this conversation, I think, is a good sign. It's a lot more difficult to cancel someone these days. I mean, there's a lot of people that will jump to your support if you are cancelled. You know,
Yeah.
Organisations like the Free Speech Union
Yes.
on this and other issues have been an absolute godsend, right? So there is a fight back going on. It may take a little bit longer than we first thought, and that's just because of how deeply embedded and ingrained these ideologies became in society. But I do think that human sensibility can ultimately win out. We've got facts, we've got reality on our side, ultimately. So, I don't know. I hope that you and I will have a conversation a few years down the line and we'll have turned a corner on this once and for all.
We'll be on the next subject. Thank you. Thank you for doing this work and coming to talk to us about it. I appreciate that. And good luck with it. I think you're on a noble mission. I think you're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone for listening. We will see you soon.